Hello, and welcome to the Investor Guys Podcast, the ultimate podcast for serious real estate investors in the know. Join your host, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills, as they share their expert insights, strategies, and tips to help you succeed in the world of real estate investing. Get ready to level up your investment game with the Investor Guys Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills.
Hello and welcome, or welcome back as the case might be, to Investor Guys Podcast. Bill, how's it going?
It's going excellent, Kev. You doing well today, brother?
I am doing well, just, typical waiting for phone calls, that type of thing. But
that's our life. That's our life. So welcome everybody to the Investor Guys Podcast. Glad that y'all are with us today. So you and I were talking about topics, and you have a topic today that is hot. Everybody loves this. Vital to asset protection, which is trust and using trust. Now, what kind of trust are you talking about, and how are we talking about using them? What we're going to do today?
Actually, we're going to talk about all types of trust. We're going to talk about the structure of a trust first, because understanding how a trust works will show us how a trust will work when we're putting our property into trust. Now, keep in mind that we can layer trust with other things, and we'll talk about that in this episode as well. The way a trust works, essentially, and I don't know if you know the history on trust or not, Bill, but this dates back to the days of Al Capone. Al Capone, when he went to prison, they took his cars, they took his money, they took a lot of things, but he kept his properties. He kept his home right here in Miami Beach. He kept his real estate because his attorneys placed them into trust. So this goes back to what was called an Illinois land trust. It's been around since the late 1800s. And trusts have been around since even before then. They used them in feudal
Roman days.
For that matter. So the trust that we are familiar with today, though, is pretty much based upon the Illinois land trust, which is, again, used with a lot of success to protect properties through history. Like I said, one of those notorious ones was, like I said, Al Capone. The way a trust works is you place a property into trust. Trust is an imaginary vessel that you're placing the property into. You nominate a trustee. The trustee is the person who is responsible for safeguarding that vessel. Now, the person who benefits from, or persons who benefit from what is in that vessel, which in our case, we're talking about real estate that's performing, are called beneficiaries. Now, beneficiary can be an individual, it can be another trust, it can be a corporation, it can be an LLC, it can be an LP, it can be anything that is an entity or a living person. It can't be your cat, it can't be your dog in most states. In some states, they've allowed it. I think New York was one. So we have a trust, which is holding our asset. We have a beneficiary, which is controlling this trust. Sorry, we have a trustee, which is controlling the trust. The trustee is the only person that is public record. The beneficiaries are not public record. When you place your property into trust, and I don't know about you, Bill, I know you're kind of sketchy on trust. When I place a property into trust, I use the address. So it's 123 Market Street Trust. Now, that in and of itself does not protect me, because somebody can literally do a title search and find out who has the note on the property. Once you start investing, as you know, Bill, we can get notes in the name of our corporations, we can get notes in the name of our trust, we can get notes in the names of whatever else. The only information that is there, though, is the name of the trustee. So if somebody's trying to contact the person who owns the property, which are the beneficiaries, they can only get a hold of the trustee. Trustee's job is to say, I'm sorry, I can't tell you who the beneficiaries of this property are. That is literally their job. They're to forward any information that they get. So if they get a legal notice, they forward that to you. You decide what you want to do with it. When they get notices from the county, they forward that to you. You decide what you're going to do with it. But their job is to not disclose who the beneficiaries of this property are. Now, I go an extra step further. I hire my trustees through my attorney. So I am also protected by client-attorney privilege. If they disclose anything by mistake or on purpose or whatever the situation is, it's inadmissible because it violated client-attorney privilege. I actually go a step further. I actually have my property managers hired by my attorneys. I have them hire lawn maintenance people and everything else through my attorneys. So everything is covered by client-attorney privilege. So I'm not going to have the lawn guys giving out information about anything to anybody, even if they knew it, because it's protected by client-attorney privilege. So one of the things that I get into when we go with corporations, trusts, LLCs is layers. So think of it as an onion. And it's kind of a reference back to Shrek, but I used this reference before then. The more layers you have to get to, the more difficult it becomes. And as you start peeling away layers of the onion, you start getting more miserable. Your nose is running, your eyes are watering, and it's harder. When you get to the middle of that onion, what do you have? You don't have gold. You literally just have more onion, okay? The more difficult you make it for somebody, the less likely they are to go after you for something that is not going to be solid as far as a lawsuit or something like that. An attorney's going to look at the trusts and they're going to say, this person has a trust, and if you want to try and breach this trust, if you want to try and crack it, it's going to take a lot of time, and you're going to have to pay me to do this, because I'm not going to do this on spec. This is going to be a retainer case, and usually at that point, it goes away. Thoughts, questions so far?
No, and I have related Al Capone trust story when we get, maybe when we come back from the break, I'll tell you my kind of related.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the break here in a minute, but I want you to marinate on this as we go into the break. Layers. The more layers you put into this without confusing yourself, the safer you make it for yourself. So your real estate trust is a vessel in and of itself. So 123 Market Street is a trust. You're not going to put anything else into that trust. That is it. That real estate is it. Your beneficiary of that trust can be your family trust. It can be your corporation. It can be whatever. I typically will use LLCs and corporations, and then the control of the LLCs or the control of the corporation, shareholders of the corporations, will be a family trust. But again, the more layers that we put into it, the more difficult it becomes. We'll talk about layers and how to interweave all of that when we get back. And we'll also talk about how to set up a trust. Let's go ahead and take a break.
We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Absolution X, limited editions, lifestyle apparel like none other. Get yours today at absolutionx.com.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at caymank.com.
reallykevin.com. Weekly recorded coaching sessions. Learn, grow, find resources, opportunities and more. You'll find it all at reallykevin.com.
And welcome back to the Investor Guys podcast. Kevin Mills, Bill Barnett here. Today we are talking about trust. And Kevin was at the break was talking about making sure that as you build this, what an important piece of asset protection it is. I want to throw out a couple of things, one to illustrate that, and then one that's a crucial business point. The crucial business point is this: get off your assets, get out and do some business so that you have something to protect. Number one crucial business point. Now, the second thing to illustrate how effective what Kevin's talking about is the use of personal property trusts. That's a whole different thing, or a slight adjunct to what we're doing. But I want to give you an example of this. Many of you are going to be old enough to remember this happening. If not, you probably have heard about it somewhere in history along the way. And that is Ted Kennedy, when he was a young guy, had an auto accident. Mary Jo Kopechne lost her life. He should have spent his life in jail. Oops, sorry. But he got away with neglecting to notify anybody that she was in a car and she drowned and died. And the Kennedys were extremely rich. And one of the things that has been a mystery through the years is how come there was ever at least a civil trial brought by the Kopechnes, and there was an attempt to do that. And what they discovered was that the car that Ted Kennedy was driving was held in a Kennedy personal property trust, meaning that if they won the suit, and they likely would do that, the only asset they would be able to attach was the car.
Which
That's all they could get.
And
And so it ended up that nothing happened once they got to that point. The attorneys dropped the suit and walked away. And that's kind of it's a very sad story there, but it is also shows the power of how strong a personal property trust can be. And so that's my Al Capone related, as I was telling you at the break. So,
and when I do these courses, I actually bring in the registration for my vehicles. My vehicles are either in the name of my corporations, and the shares of my corporations are held by a trust, or they're actually in the name of a trust. Because I have a lot of collector vehicles, I actually have them in a name of a trust. I have 2 different trusts for that. And again, the only way you can breach that information is, I honestly don't know if there's a legal way to do that, because the whole entire thing was set up to protect you. So even if they knew, and they knew who controlled that trust, it was somebody in the Kennedy family. Okay, when Chappaquiddick happened, which is what they refer to it as, I think Papa Joe was still alive.
He was.
And he was probably the one who was the primary beneficiary on the trust. But there was no way to go after him because of the way a trust is set up. So let's go into that a little bit further. The first thing you need to do when you acquire your property is place it into trust. You can do that simply by doing a quit claim deed to your own trust. Okay, 123 Market Street Trust. File it at the county recorder's office with the name of a trustee. You do not file any work from your trust. If you put together a trust agreement that lists out the beneficiaries or anything else, you do not file that, because then that becomes public record. A trust is blind. That means that there's no information that is recorded about a trust other than the trustee and the name of the trust. Okay, so this asset is now owned by, legally, because you've got a title to it, just like a vehicle, okay, now legally owned by the trust. If somebody wants to try and sue you, and again, this isn't so that we can get away with not doing what we're supposed to do, okay? We live in a very litigious society, unfortunately, and some states are even more litigious than others. There are literally attorneys that encourage renters and encourage literally people walking down the sidewalk to look for a crack in the sidewalk to trip over and harm themselves so that they can go after the property owner, because they know that that person has value, if nothing else, in that property that they can go after. So everything we can do to protect ourselves, we need to do that. Now, the beneficial interest of that property can be you as an individual, like we spoke of before. It can be a family trust. It can be a corporation. It can be an LLC. Now, the way I usually do it is I usually invest using corporations, because I can get loans in the name of my corporations now, because I've done this long enough that I have corporate credit. And whenever I can, I open another corporation and another corporation and another corporation so that I can build credit with those corporations. And I just have this string of entities. A corporation is considered an individual. I have this string of entities that I can get credit in. So the beneficial interest of that trust is the corporation. The corporation is who's also listed on the loan for that property. If somebody wants to say, okay, well, we'll sue the corporation because the corporation has a loan on it, so they must be the beneficiary. Usually the court will shut that down, but let's play devil's advocate and say that they don't. The corporation is only limited to that value of that property as far as the lawsuit goes. They're not able to do anything else. They're not able to disclose any other information as far as what that corporation owns, because it is a privately held corporation. I do not trade that corporation. It is not publicly listed. I do not have a requirement to list what my assets are or anything else, only the income that I have to pay taxes on. The shareholder of that corporation, if I have to list shareholders, and some states require that you do, some states don't. Nevada is one that you don't. Wyoming is one that you don't. Delaware is one that you don't. And we'll talk about layering corporations in a different episode or even another course. They cannot come after the corporation for any assets because they don't know what assets to literally request. They can't go after a bank account because they don't know what bank account to go. Usually it's not going to get that far anyway. Usually the judge is going to say, you're shooting into toilet paper. Nothing's going to happen. And that is the beauty of trust. That's why I like trust. And that's the conversation that we kind of had when we went into this, Bill, was trust. And again, the more difficult you make it from the very beginning, from the very onset, when an attorney looks at this and he says, this is going to take a lot of time to do if we even get it done. And this isn't something I'm going to wait for, a big payday, because I don't see it happening anytime soon. It's going to be a lot of time. You're going to have to pay me a retainer in order to make this happen. Usually when the attorney has that conversation with their prospective client, they write off their big dreams of suing you, and they move on to looking for their next victim. And that's really why we want to do this. This is the main reason why we're doing this, is to protect ourselves. We're ready for a break.
Yeah, we are. We're a little over.
Back from that in just a second, and we'll talk a little more about this as we wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at caymank.com.
Get ready for power, for success, for solutions and answers. It's all in one place, www.reallykevin.com. Education, opportunities, coaching, and so much more.
Absolution X. Lifestyle apparel like no other. Only at absolutionx.com. Get yours.
And we are back. And we were talking about trust and protecting ourselves and protecting our real estate, our assets. And while we were on the break, Bill and I were having a conversation, and I'm not going to get into Bill's experience on this, but one of the things that I really want to point out that gives you extra leverage and extra protection is that legal aspect of having an attorney hire your trustee, having an attorney take care of everything literally that you can have them do. And it's not that difficult to do. You don't have to have an attorney on retainer. Some of us do, I know Bill does, but you can literally get LegalZoom or prepaid legal, even better. And you can contact your attorney that you work with through prepaid legal, and they don't even charge you for this. You literally ask them to put together a hire agreement with their name on it for the client that you're going to hire. And it's protected because it is your attorney that hired them. They hired them on your behalf, but because they hired them for you, they are now an employee of that attorney. You're paying that attorney through your monthly fees that you're paying, but you're paying that employee through the attorney. And that is what gives you that extra layer of protection. A doctor, patient, and client attorney privilege is the gold standard when you go to court. When you say this is an employee of the attorney, they are not able to breach their
fiduciary
responsibility. The judge understands that. The judge typically has been an attorney before. The judge has been bound by client attorney privilege themselves and will be in the future as well. So that is again the frosting on the cake on all of this. And again, what we want to do in addition to protecting ourselves is to make it more difficult for someone to find who is at the middle of that onion. And literally when they get to that middle of that onion, there is nothing there. Okay. It's all smoke and mirrors. And it's not so that we can get away with anything. It is, this will not let you not pay taxes. This will not let you not pay the mortgage on the property. This will protect you from frivolous lawsuits. Okay.
And that's really what this whole thing is about, is frivolous. And it also helps separate assets. So that if you have multiple trusts going on and something not frivolous happens at one property, and I'll go back, and I've used this probably before during the podcast somewhere, not today, but I had an acquaintance in Atlanta that had 150 multifamily units all together. And he had them in his personal name. And we had conversation about, dude, you are setting yourself up for a world of hurt. You need to get a corporate entity at a minimum, LLC. You got to do something. Well, a lady so here's a non-frivolous event. A lady was, he had a three-story property in one of his multifamily properties. Lady was walking down the stairs on a Sunday morning to go to church. She had a long flowing skirt on. She got her heel caught. She fell down the stairs. She broke her back and became quadriplegic. That is tragic. So her attorney, of course, he had insurance on his property. That insurance, you can exceed the value that the insurance will pay. The attorney went after everything and won, and the guy got wiped out because of the fact that he was, I start to say poorly structured. He really wasn't structured at all, but incredibly poorly structured. And that's what this is about. It doesn't protect you from something that you do wrong. Did he have some liability? Well, the court said yes, he did. But if he had it structured correctly, it would have been held to either that trust, that LLC, and it wouldn't have wiped him out. She would have gotten a handsome sum of money, but it also would not have wiped him out, all the things that he had worked for all that time. So that's what this is about, is making sure that you're protecting your assets, not trying, as Kevin has said, not trying to do something inappropriate, illegal, but trying to make sure that you don't get wiped out if something bad does happen.
And if you don't know who to nominate as a trustee, this is kind of in closing here, there are trusts, national trusts. They operate in all 50 states, and they provide trustees, and they have attorneys as well. And they typically charge anywhere from $100 to $1,000 a month, depending upon the type of trust agreement that they want you to be the trustee for. I highly, if you've got an asset that is of any value, I highly recommend using one of these instead of your cousin Bobby or your sister or your nephew or something like that. Have a professional trust company, nominate a trustee. They will keep track of everything for you. They also have insurance. So if they do something that fails you, then you can actually sue them. Their insurance will cover it. Again, not anything we're trying to escape responsibility for, not so that we can get away with anything, but literally to protect our assets, exactly as Al Capone was able to do. When Al Capone was released from Alcatraz, he moved into his house in Miami Beach. The house is still there. It's actually a bed and breakfast now. He moved into his house in Miami Beach and lived out the rest of his life on the income that his properties in Chicago and New York and other places where he had bought property were making for him, because he still had those properties. I don't know if you knew this. This is a fun car fact, Bill. The police confiscated Al Capone's limo, and Al Capone's limo actually had a siren on it so that he could get through traffic. Okay. It was also bulletproof. The FBI used it for a while because they didn't have any bulletproof vehicles. And for a while, it served as the presidential limousine because it had the siren on it and it was bulletproof. And it was before the president. It was the first bulletproof presidential limousine. And
I did not know that.
Assets that they took from Al Capone that weren't in trust. So let's wrap this up, and we'll have something interesting to talk about on Monday. And
So we trust you had a enjoyable, informative podcast with us. All pun intended there. And please join us again right here on the Investor Guys podcast. Jump over to the website, investorguyspodcast.com. If you'd like to email Kevin or I, it's kevin@investorguyspodcast.com or bill@investorguyspodcast.com. Reach out to us. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and join us next time right here on the Investor Guys podcast. Kev?
we'll
I'll
see you guys
brother.
soon. Bill, have a good one.
See you now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Investor Guys podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated on the latest trends and insights in the world of real estate investing. Also, don't forget to check us out and see all of our episodes at theinvestorguyspodcast.com. Email us, contact@investorguyspodcast.com. Remember, the key to financial success lies in staying informed and taking action. Stay tuned for our next episode, and until then, happy investing.